Everyone. Keep saying hello when you're joining. I think there's going to be people from all over the world, and I would be fascinated to know where you're coming from. So if you would you mind, in the first kind of part of this evening, popping your name and where you're coming from, and any words, like 3 words to tell us how you're feeling about being here tonight on the chat. And then we'll be able to kind of just get to know each other a little bit to begin with.
Takes my time.
So I'm going to ask you, just because now that we've all been saying hello, if you could put yourselves on mute again, otherwise we'll have some horrible echoes coming through. Thank you very much. So a warm welcome to you to this evening. We're a big group tonight because some of you have already signed up for the Return Songs of Return program, and this is your first evening on that. And there are a lot here who are curious, wondering what it's about, hoping to find out a little bit more, might join us. So we're a bigger group than we are likely to be. But you are all welcome. It's lovely to see some familiar faces. There's a number of you I can see already who stand behind the inspiration for this course. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a little minute. For those of you that I haven't met before, a very warm welcome to you. You might be new to Animate Earth. My name is Angharad Wynn. I'm a storyteller, an animism teacher, a writer, and a ceremonialist. I work with the Brythonic tradition of the British Isles, but I will be facilitating the Songs of Return program. So to tell you a little bit about that program, really, before we welcome Sam in, this has been being brewed, if you like, and in discussion amongst us as a team for a while. And as I said, there's a number of you here tonight who, along the way on different programs, I've noticed so much creativity. And also, I think with the work of animism, as we go deeper, as we begin to see the world as animate, as the whole of it as having sentience, we open our hearts and our minds to the delicious possibility of deep connection with all life and the more than human. Then something arises in us as we stand on this ecological precipice, that we feel the need or the want to do something. Now, I'm a firm believer in the old belief that we all come in with a number of gifts. And for some of us, it takes an awful long time to find out what they are. We're often kind of through school and everything, we're stuffed full of what society wants us to know and wants us to be. And sometimes there's parental pressure or life pressure. But somewhere along the line, most of us will come close to understanding what some of those gifts are. For some, it will be brilliant at organizing things. For some, you will have some kind of burgeoning kind of creativity amongst other skills and talents as well. And one of the things I've come to know from my own work as a storyteller is how powerful it is to engage others, to gather together people, to engage them using creativity to pull people into the discussion of what's going on in our world, about ecological collapse, about all these things, but not in the way that it floors us completely, but in the way that we can gather together and make something happen. Try our best, offer our gifts in service to all that is, in service to this time now. I know a number of parents, and maybe there's some of you here tonight who want to be able to tell your kids and your grandkids that you tried doing something at these times, that you didn't sit back and watch as all these kind of species retreated from our world as our planet got hotter and hotter, but you did something. And I'm sure that many of you are already doing some things, many things, but there's always a sense that maybe there's more. And I'm imagining that many of you are here tonight because of that impetus, because of that sense that you might want to become active in some way and offer your creativity and your the skills and the gifts that you were born with to put your shoulder to the wheel sometime. The other thing that sits behind this program is a few years ago, I was sitting in keeping Sam Lee's perch warm at singing for nightingales. He hosts every year. He goes to the woods, and as a way of raising awareness of the plight of the nightingale, which is one of our threatened species, he invites musicians to come and play and perform with the nightingales, and he gathers people into the woods. It's a really beautiful experience, and it's a way of raising awareness of the plight of the nightingales and other passerines, other songbirds, what's happening here in Britain and across the world. And I noticed how that one act, the creative act of bringing musicians together, kind of gathering an audience, an ability to talk about these matters, and then giving people an experience that really opens their hearts and minds, how transformative that has been. And the awareness of the plight of nightingales over the last kind of 5 years or so, since Sam has been kind of doing this, has gone up and up and up. And places like NEP and other rewilding centres have started really monitoring what's happened to the nightingales, and they've got involved. They've kind of added their activity to that, so that together there's been a raising of awareness. And that's just one species. And there are many other such things going on in small pockets. I've got friends who do a storytelling show called Gong Cuckoo to raise awareness of the plight of the cuckoo here in Britain. I also am of that generation that remembers here in Wales in the 1980s the attempt to bring the red kite back from extinction. The beautiful red kite had dwindled to just a very few breeding pairs in Wales and in England. But in Wales, where it had been a really popular bird, it had really diminished because of changing in farming practices, and because they were often shot at and things like that, because they were sometimes a nuisance to farmers. And it took a number of agencies coming together with creativity, with people talking up the plight of this species. And now we have a really vibrant community of red kites here in Wales, and they've now kind of repopulated parts of England as well. I have about 5 nesting pairs around me here where I live at the moment, and it's just every time I see them, I remember that there are things that we can do. And so this is all the background to why we have set up this program that we're inviting you to join us on. What we thought we would do is to bring together some of the very finest tutors and thinkers and activists and people who use their art
Thank
and
you.
creativity in order to raise the profile and to support diversity of species across the world. So we've got Sam Lees joining us tonight, because I wanted him, because he was so much a part of the inspiration for this program, I wanted to start off with him. He is a singer, a song collector, an English folk singer. He's a Mercury Prize nominee. He's an author. He wrote a book about nightingales and is a general extraordinary human being, one of my very, very favorite people, who's done a lot for raising awareness not just of kind of conservation issues, but also land rights and things here in Britain. And we'll get to meet Sam. Sam will be joining us at about 7 o'clock. Then we've got John Young, who many of you will know, internationally renowned tracker, environmentalist, and conservationist. He's written a load of books. He teaches a load of programs on how to track and communicate with animals, how to observe them. And so the next part of the program, he'll be coming on to talk about how to work with species, how to observe them, what to do. We will also be, as well as teaching sessions, we will always also have circles. And those really are for us to work with each other. You might find that you want to collaborate creatively with others who might be focused on the same species, might have different art form than you, but together we can be more powerful, right? But we'll also be helping you to know how to pull projects together by introducing you to nature and conservation organizations in your area as well. After that, we've got Dylan McGarry, I think, come to join us. He is both an academic, an activist, and a creative activist. He is a fine artist, but he is also the founder and director of Empatheatre, a South African-based theatre that works with communities to help champion local species and local ways of life and local traditions and customs and languages. And he has a wealth of experience of mixing activism and art. We've also got Alexandra Blakely. If any of you here are singers and songwriters, she's an American singer-songwriter doing beautiful work. She's also a grief tender and often works with tending grief, environmental grief, as well as other forms of grief. And she'll be coming to talk about and helping us to write songs. I'll be running a session on storytelling, and we might do some writing through that as well. We've also got Cesar he's the head of the MOTH, the More Than Human Rights organization. If any of you have read the book Is a River Alive? Any hands up? Anybody read that book? Then Cesar is in that book. The author goes into one of the rainforests of, I think it's Ecuador with Cesar. He runs an organization. He was a lawyer for human rights, specializing in indigenous rights. But for the last kind of 15 years, he has shifted over and developed at New York University a department focused entirely on the rights of nature. And at the moment, they've done a lot of work on getting rights for certain rivers. They're currently doing work with whales in seas all around the world. And I think they've got the idea of looking at a mountain after that, and a number of other species as well. So he will really be talking about the legal frameworks and how we can work with some of those things as well. We've also got Manda Scott, who many of you will know, an amazing writer and activist and a podcaster. And she will be joining me and some others at, as well as the online teaching sessions and the online circles, we will also be hosting an in-person retreat. Now that will be UK based, but if there's enough of you in, say, for example, the USA, we'll consider coming out and doing one there as well, where we can gather the work together, where we can look, and the hope is we might be able to invite some funders along to see how we can gain some funding to help you amplify the work that you're doing and developing. So that's the kind of shape of the course. It's designed to help you get going, to support you in whatever way we can to kind of create and generate an idea and to see it through to fruition. And it can be as small or as big as you like. You don't have to be some hotshot artist who's already made it. You might just be on the beginning of your path. That's okay. We will meet you at the level that you are. And I guess, if I'm honest, my private dream, my personal dream for this is that we create a battalion of creative activists who, through their artistry, creativity, and passion for all life, put our shoulder to the wheel, that we build a community that will last way beyond this program, supporting each other to continue to do things in whatever way we can to support the maintenance of species diversity. And they can be animals, plants, anything that is alive, any species that you want to champion, that you feel called to, that's okay with us. We will support that. There might be some questions. There might be things running in your mind. I would like now, just to help you to land with some of that, to put you into groups for 10 minutes, small groups, to get to know each other a little bit, and ask you to answer a question. One, why did you come here tonight? Is there something in your belly already? And do you have a species that you're particularly wanting to work with? So if you can, about 10 minutes, I'll call you back. When I call you back, don't press anything. You have an extra minute and you will be brought back automatically. And then we'll be introducing you to Sam. We'll have a little bit of a flavor of what's happened in the rooms, and then Sam will join us. Thank you. And let me have 2 minutes to put you into rooms. So you're going to be in rooms of 3 to 4 people. So it's nice and small. Actually, 2 to 3 would be better. 3 to 4 is the minimum much we can do. Okay, enjoy your conversations. Anyone struggling with getting into their room? If you're on a phone, it's a bit more complicated. Sometimes it's not easy to see, but there's a place at the bottom. If you click on, I think it's more or breakout rooms, or the 3 dots sometimes, and more, it'll give you breakout rooms. If you click on breakout rooms, it should invite you to a breakout room. Anybody still here? Welcome back, everyone. Now, the only trouble about kind of being here, not being in a group, is I never get to hear all the juicy stuff that happens in the groups. So I would love just a little flavor, and Sam has joined us. So Sam and I would both love to hear a little flavor of what came up in your groups. Maybe 1 or 2 of you can share a little about why you're curious or why you're interested in this program and what's coming up for you right now, and maybe a species that is enticing you to work with them. You always spread across some screens. So if you can put an electronic hand up, that would be helpful. If you go down to the little react button, the heart button at the bottom of your screens. You can click that and put a hand up. That would be great. Yes, Neil, thank you.
I'll start off just by saying I don't have a particular species that I'm particularly interested in, but I'm acutely aware of the vast array of species that are under threat, and that's some of what we discussed in our group. And it's something that I've been acutely aware of and continue to be acutely aware of, and how the whole ecosystem seems to be in such a degraded state, really. And I work as a psychotherapist. I work with people in the outdoors, helping them support their developing relationship with the natural world. But I feel I want to be doing more, and at this point, I'm not doing more. So I think that's about all I want to say.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure that, helping people with the anxiety of kind of what's happening around is a good thing to be doing. We need that too, Neil. Thank you. Megan.
Hello, my name's Megan from Australia.
Welcome
What brought me here is my love for a mountain, a volcanic plug, really, in the Glasshouse Mountains on the Sunshine Coast. I've lived there for 23 years, and really it was the start of my healing, this connection with this mountain. And so recently, just a short story, I'm in a group to protect the mountain because we have a massive quarry that is quarrying near the mountain and is wanting to expand. I created this group, Save Our Glasshouse Mountains, and just going through all the protocol, but I just want to do it a different way. It just feels, within the system, it's not cohesive to my system or cohesive to the land or to all beings. So this just came in at the most perfect time, this course, and I read it. And when I read A Mountain Might Be Calling You, it just felt like Canaran was calling me. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. And thank you for getting up at some probably extraordinary time of the day, I'm imagining, in Australia to join us.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a sense, isn't there? And I think it's increasing shared sense that the powers that be are not going to be enough to make a difference. We kind of all need to get involved in some way. So I'm glad to hear that a mountain is calling you and that there's a group forming. Brilliant. Thank you, Megan. Anna.
Body, and thank you. In our breakout group, we spoke about, and the folks have been involved in and very aware with things like burnout. When you're active in the ecological space or in the care space, and what it takes to reconnect. We spoke about things like compassion fatigue, and the importance of having community as well and support in our endeavors, not necessarily on a content level, but knowing that we do have a tribal community of others who are also saying the good words and singing the good songs and bringing forward these ways of reconnection. We also spoke about some of the more somatic aspects and embodiment practices in nature connection, the challenges of using words only and the restrictions of using language only to try to, convince, persuade, or make an argument for nature, and how they have to be other ways where creativity and connection can come through that also inspires people to perhaps hear and sense in ways beyond just their mind, given the overwhelm in the world today, the overwhelm of data and information, and people's very short attention spans. So these were some of the themes that came up in our breakout room.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anna. Yeah. Thank you for bringing in that that sense that, language is valuable, but there is more. The somatic is really important in all that. And I think kind of creativity can engage and work with a lot of that aspect as well, and about bringing in community. And I guess one of the things that we will be nurturing as much as we possibly can on this program is this community as a community of interrelated, interconnected humans across the world who have a vision and a way of seeing, and are wanting support, encouragement to share practice, to share ideas about how we can together make a difference in our own small or large ways. So thank you. Time for just two more quickly. Megan. Oh, I think it's just that you still have your hand up, isn't it, Megan? Or is that a different Megan? And V. Let's go to V.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I was having terrible problems with my microphone earlier. Yeah, thank you. I'm based in the southeast of England, on the coast, and there's a few communities around here. We're starting to work with the water quality of our creeks and rivers, and we're basically in the sort of Thames estuary. So a lot of the rivers are flowing in, flowing out of the great mighty Thames, and the water quality down here is terrible. And so we've been there was a River Medway last year, and there's the River Stour, and a few creeks that run into the more industrial lands around here, of starting to pilgrimage those rivers and get actors together to understand the really the river as a living being, right? And the interconnectedness of all of our estuarine and coastal communities with the river, and how our fates are so connected. And we have a barge that we work with, that we move around, and we bring communities and artists together in different places around the estuary. But obviously the Thames is, we started with these small projects, and the water quality is absolutely terrible. And we've been doing blessings on the water, and we actually went up to the Thames, and afterwards everyone was really sick that had taken part in that. It was like, wow, this is huge. So the going from little tiny creeks right up to the Thames is going to require a whole lot of interconnected communities to come together, but really hoping that we can have an effect within the structure of the law. So the more than human rights movement, and possibly through the ecocide movement as well. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's my interest. And then this course arrived, and it was yeah, just it feels really timely, because we're a little bit overwhelmed with the scale of the task down here.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's really exciting to have got to step one tonight, or step zero even. And yeah, really happy to meet you all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, V. And wouldn't it be great if through this community you found more helping hands and kind of more voices, and that there is a possibility here that we might end up pooling kind of collaborations and more people to work together on kind of bigger projects. It would be a great thing. Thank you, all of you. I'm kind of really delighted to hear that there are mountains and rivers and species and animals and plants that are calling us and asking for our help, and that we're turning up willing to put our shoulder to the wheel of helping them. But I'd like to introduce you now, though he's probably kind of, he's far better known than I am. Many of you, he's the star turn tonight. Kind of guest tutor Sam Lee, one of my very favorite kind of people. Sam, I think we met in Thessalonica when we were both quite a bit younger. You were barefoot. You'd just been nominated for the Mercury Prize, I think, with your first album, or was it your second album? And you were doing a showcase.
Mm.
And I remember kind of clocking you and thinking, wow, there's a young man that's going to do amazing things in the world. And then following a little bit and realizing that we both had so much in common in terms of our ways of seeing the world, our love of the old ways, and I suppose our passion for conservation and wildlife and doing what we can. But, you've done it on a big stage, and my hat's off to you for that. But I'd like to start maybe this conversation with a little bit of exploration, or asking you, when did that kind of care for conservation and land rights meet with your passion for music and traditional song? Did one influence the other? Is it chicken and egg? Which came first?
Well, firstly, Angahara and everyone, thank you so much for having me. Beautiful to be part of this circle and connecting with all the worlds that everyone's brought here to this group. And it's lovely, this community, because it reminds me so much of the community that I grew up in, that fostered both those appreciations hand in hand, that I never saw them as separate. In fact, if anything, the going on a musical career was the bit that started the division as opposed to the unification of them. I grew up in an outdoor education charity for children called Forest School Camps, and there the celebration and the allegiance making with the natural world in beautiful parts of Britain and Ireland, with kids who are the greatest teachers of them all. Just sort of as a child growing up in it, and then being a young adult, really stepping into the journey of being a wilderness guide, leader, a forager, a sort of a musical glee convener, of creating that the campfire culture, and what it meant in the lineage of that organization to look after the land, to leave no trace. Basic principles for us now, but actually in those times in the 90s were quite radical things that I realized I was quite unique as a inner city London kid to have encountered and seen, not just the doctrine, but the practice of, and how we saw the map of the layers of generations of that organization, which is about 100 years old now, leaving no trace, and how we would return to places that 120 kids had spent 4 weeks living on, and yet there was no evidence of us being there. And that, so seeing the principles of care and that reciprocity, a word that is relatively new for me. We didn't use those words in those days. Was just, that's what we did. It was basically like making your bed when you get up in the morning. It was as simple as that in how we cared for the land, and how the songs that we sang kind of held us all to account in some sort of way, to remind us what happens when we don't look after each other, or songs about, as the folk tradition has, vast amounts of determined protest about about social welfare, I guess, and ecological welfare too. So yeah, that was sort of how I was brought up, and I realized that was a real gift, and part of why I've been trying to get the music world, where we met at some industry conference, and bring them over to the land justice and ecological rights, and stop ecocide and pilgrimages for the River Medway and all those communities, and the music world, and just be like, we are not separate. The music industry is utterly dependent on a healthy ecosystem, and artists are screaming to be more ecologically connected. So I sort of sit in this weird gulf between trying to build as many bridges as I can, because the music industry is desperate for relevance and being efficacy, and also the environmental world in many ways is desperate for culture. The River Medway pilgrimage is a rare one where community and culture and music and ceremony is happening as part of frontline activism. But these are not, apart from the work of XR and other sort of grassroots frontline. Well, yeah. So it's how one brings all those people to the table that excites me.
Yeah. And I think you've been involved in so many different things, and then all of a sudden I watched you focus in on nightingales. Just tell us a little bit of the background of that, because that's been an incredible, well, kind of a passion of yours, and there's so much that's come out of it, it seems.
Well, tuning into this inquiry that you've just had now, but I'm sure many of you have been on for, like, which species speak to us, or do we hear deepest, or do I just long for, where that sense of longing and belonging um, to a single species, or a collection of species, perhaps, or a bit of a land that is special because of the gathering. And I've I I I will confess that although the nightingale is the being that I'm most associated with now, uh, nightingale wasn't the first bird to capture my heart and find that sense of kinship with. It was actually the heron, funnily enough, which still stands for me as a bird that I sort of identify with. But hey, we can be polyamorous with these sorts of things. And I'm not a single bird man. That respect.
Polyanimate.
But polyamorous. Oh, I like that. Hello. Did you just make that up, or is that like in your
I just made that up, Sam.
right? Everyone write that one down. Um, uh, Brilliant. Uh, and Nightingale came to me through an introduction through a family many years ago, entwined with a beautiful and heartbreaking story of deep tragedy of the night I first was introduced to Nightingale. A child was born that night, and almost exactly a year later, that child's mother and sister were killed in a terrible accident. And Nightingale suddenly came in as this kind of extraordinary spirit bird for Polly and Vita. Um, and and there began this journey of a bird that was so associated for me with this terrible loss, but also a guidance of hope, and a bird that held a song that I suddenly realized, wow, I have to hear this bird, and I have to hear this bird every year. So I made these essentially pilgrimages, but they're just efforts to try and find a nightingale in the spring, just to go and listen. And then, long story short, a BBC documentary was commissioned for me to make to celebrate a BBC anniversary. Nightingales were there at the first ever live radio broadcast in the world in 1924. And I somehow got this commission to celebrate the 90th anniversary. Went into the woods, into the blackthorn bush with a microphone in my band and a producer, and did something I'd never done before, which was try and make music with the bird, like this cellist Beatrice Harrison had done 90 years before. And what precipitated was this phenomenal interaction between the bird and us musicians, um, that was beyond belief. And I had to listen back to the recording to see whether I had just imagined that there had been um, this jam, this like interaction. That was singing in key with us, um, and like I just knew this is something that everybody has to experience. And I always laugh by saying that you can't bring Muhammad to the mountain, bring the mountain to Muhammad. So the Nightingale's home has to become the theatre, because let's build the concert around the bird. And so slowly I started to grow a way of bringing people and musicians, artists who would never ever go into the dark, bring their violins into the damp woods, to come and test out this thing. And it's grown into this massive practice with 40 nights a year, 1,600 people a year coming through the woods. Angharad, you've been a host, taken my role of stewarding the audience and the musicians, and we hold these, what I can say to you, ceremonies. They are ceremonies with this bird, because they are so invitational and accepting of us. And there's not many times where wild animals will let you sit by their side and sing with you. And it's something else. And I feel like the whole world should experience it, for so many reasons that we can go into. So, yeah.
One of the things that always astonished me, because before I sat in for you, I came to one in Gloucester, and I listened to you. You were singing that night with, you had the shruti box with the bird, and I just remember feeling just kind of overcome with emotion. That thing of, I think as humans, we tend to think that we are always the ones observing the natural world, that we are the ones yearning for interaction, and suddenly there is this species that is clearly interacting with us and playing creatively with, in this case it was you, but since kind of sitting in for you a few times, I've heard it happen with musicians time and time again, and it's mind-blowing, and it's deeply, deeply humbling, I find it.
Yeah. I like this idea that we are being observed, but this concept of what does it mean to be observed by nature, that is so critical for where we are at societally, and why this, the power of this bird to dissolve that boundary, and within that kind of Cartesian split that we have, that's wrecked our planet and our relationship to the planet, and put us so much aside as somehow higher, more important. The revelation I find of the nightingale, and I hope others do too, is this sense that we are a bit nightingale, and the nightingale is a bit us, that they have a human quality, and actually that we have evolved with nightingales. They've been singing their song long, unchanged pretty much, long before we ever got on our two back feet and stood up. We have absolutely heard this bird throughout our entire species evolution, and they have informed us and led us and taught us, not just nightingales, so many other birds, but they hold this cultural importance, and then, my God, are they like in every folk song, in every culture around the Northern Hemisphere? Nightingales are there, pretty like front row, to stage.
Stories too, yeah.
Stories, yeah, absolutely. Myth, you name it, they're there. Particularly ironically in Thessaloniki, in the Greek mountains,
Yeah.
where we met. And the reason for that is that they have always been identified as being the bird most associated with eros, with creativity, and I think that potency that they have held has been part of how species have been the carriers and the kind of wisdom keepers within our species, as totemic, as a guidance, and as a personality, or a range of personalities, because there'll be many personalities within a species, that has really informed us and helped us develop this, to be the species that is so multi-linguistic, multi-neurologically complex and diverse. I think that it's the animal kingdom and the bird kingdom and the fungi and tree kingdom and other kingdoms we might not even have names for, that have helped nourish and nurture that development. But nightingales hold a very, very unique and important place. And I'm going back to learn from them in that way and hopefully bring other musicians to be students of that singularity of creative singularity that they have and decorative brilliance.
One of the things, just hearing you talk now, it reminds me of, the time in the woods on those nights. This is one species, but through working with them and bringing focus on them, you have found out, you've learned so much about you ended up writing a book about them. But there's also a sharing of that in the woods on the evening, and of the plight of the nightingale right now. And so my sense is that when people come to one of these evenings, they come for an event, but they go away really informed and inspired by the relationship, the relationality, and the kind of the what happens in the woods, but also aware and feeling the plight of the nightingale in a very different way from just kind of reading a flat book about it. We read all the time about red squirrels, nightingales, and all these species in decline and on red lists. But when you experience the exquisiteness of what is about to be lost, the poignancy of that, coupled with the information and the discussion and the shared space to talk about and enter into that sense of concern, is a really powerful thing. So, we've got kind of creativity and artistry and music as a catalyst for a whole lot more. I'm wondering how much of that was, when you first kind of hit on the idea, how much of it was planned and how much of that has evolved over time, and maybe in the way that sometimes happens creatively, we start on a creative journey and we have not an idea of the things that will spin out of it.
No, we don't, and that's the job of the artist, to enter into those places of uncertainty and the unknown, and challenge the presumed. I sometimes feel like I've cheated a little bit, and I sort of, without saying too much about what happens, and you are all welcome. I'm there in a month. 9th of April we start, and just can't wait to sit around the fire with beautiful people and food. And I kind of like, I'm gonna almost like pop the illusion here by saying I feel like what we do is so obvious. It's simple, and for a lot of people it is obvious and simple. It's people sitting in a circle. We all know the power of the circle. We're kind of in one now, in a sort of mosaicked way. The power of fire. For me, the nightingale is the kind of, the jewel in the crown, but the 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 container is held by the fire, and it's always in service to fire, the ultimate alchemical force that has changed us, created us. And I'm just working with this kind of the theatre of the woods and the spring, and that in a sort of like, the activism for me is as much about, why on earth would we be in a house with a roof when the spring stars are out and the aromas of the pollens are in the air, and that stillness that you only get in spring, incredible nighttime stillness, the sounds of the forest, the warmth of, food cooked over the fire. All these things are like, why did we create a world that took us away from all of this? I'm just like, it's just get us back to the good old ways. But actually, within creating that, comfortability and support and sanctuary of that space, and bringing story into that place, and it's not just what we say, how we share story and song around the fire in the good old way. It's the old technology. It really isn't. It works. It really absolutely works. But what it does is it opens people's heart. It animates this idea of mystery and, well, the word that I'm really dwelling with right now is awe.
Mm.
Um, and how do we create? I'm calling them awe prints. This is my new term. I'm done with carbon footprints. I think that term should be banned from the world. It's a horrific BP constructed, British Petroleum constructive branding exercise to make us stuck. I want us to focus our life on how do we bring awe into the world, and are left with the muddy awe prints of experiences like this that make us connected. And it's through these moments of heart opening that we actually find ourselves called into a sense of, as we're saying within the Right to Row movement, of responsibility, the ability to respond and to belong, to feel that to longing for something, and to take in a sense of protection. It can only really happen through the heart. I could sit and give you half an hour's worth of statistics on nightingale decline, percentage losses, population shrinkages, and it would make me sound really impressive that I know lots of shit about nightingales. But actually, it's it means nothing. It has no impact whatsoever. We're drowning in data, we're drowning in statistics. For me, the most powerful thing is to tell everyone a beautiful story, sing a beautiful song, listen to the nightingale, and fall in love. And when you fall in love, you will do anything within your powers to look after that thing we love. And that is what art does. And it's what I know best. I'm a shit politician. I'd make a crap councillor, or or CEO of some nature NGO. I can't do that stuff. But what I can do is make people go, ah, I can be whimsical and I can charm and I can invite people to be reminded that we are all soulful, romantic, filled beings filled with love and emotion, and to come into a safe, contained, held space where we can be in love with each other and with the natural world in a way is that disappears all those barbed wire fences and laws about what you can do, and all those poison rivers and all the things that like are like nightmares around us, that that toxify our relationship with nature. In the darkness and in round the fire, suddenly we can be reminded of the the singular, beautiful, easy things for us to just remind. It's hope. It's what hope is for me. Yeah.
Oh, the thing with feathers.
Yes.
So I imagine there's quite a few people here tonight that might be thinking of music and song, maybe old folk songs, maybe creating events like this in some way. Advice and pointers. It's a big question, I know, but
You're asking me, or are you asking us to come up with questions?
no, I'm asking you.
Advice and pointers, yeah. Um, so yeah, this is so important. It's the call to action. The invitation for me, like I would like to live in a world where Sing with Nightingales didn't need to happen. And I have a whole piece in my book all about this, that I dream of a time where England, because we only have nightingales in England, didn't need to go and do a Scottish Robert Burns like ceremony to celebrate our identity, that we held the Sing with Nightingales experiences of our own accord. Families and friends went out into the woods. This is a little vision I have, that one day we would just do the Sing with Nightingales things in our communities, and we travel across the country to find a nightingale and do what I do. I'm just the guide doing it because the toolkit isn't readily available or there, though actually it's simple stuff. This works with nightingales. We don't all have nightingales, especially if we live, far away from the southeast of England. They're pretty common on the continent. but in other parts of the world, how do we find a way of uh, animating the spirit of the land, a species, a river, a being, an entity, in a way that we don't feel like idiots doing. We don't laugh at ourselves or feel cynical, or how can we do this in a way that is playful? How can we do this in a way that is brave and inspiring and can bring others in? And the short answer is there is no right or wrong way. We are all agents in this. Some of us are better than others, and I think there are people in our communities who are natural leaders and are the ones who now to know how to convene. And we are all have a role within our communities. So community first is the most important thing. The River Medway one I love as a great example. I'm such a fan of V of you, if it is of that movement, because it's one that is in response to our river, and it has become so wonderfully curated and held by the community, everyone finding their role within it. What is it that needs healing first and foremost? That's a big question. It could be fuck off mine, with some multinational and an army around them of lawyers and, security. How do we engage with that? I don't know. You see Fairy Creek in Canada, in West Coast Canada, doing the anti-logging work for the redwood forest there. And you see it's a massive operation of resilience building. It doesn't have to always be, such a strong protest. Protest can be gentle and light. But I think it has to be filled with joy, because for me, always joy. The smother with love. How can we show that our love for something is so bold and will overrule the entities? The Sheffield Tree protest movement that happened some years ago in our wonderful northern town is a wonderful example of community-led activism from people who aren't wild patchouli wearing hippies like you and me here. These were middle class normal people, who never thought they would ever sit on a street and tie themselves to a tree. A wonderful example of community uprising. It's finding that wonderful ratio of rage, of rebellion, and ridicule to, concoct to an alliteration. And how can we fire people up, and how can we create a gathering, an entity that is, and I'm loving this word at the moment, irresistible. We have to create these movements, and the thing that we're doing is being irresistible. We have to be part of it. It's essential. What I will say is that the communication of that is really hard and really sensitive. And I think I throw my hands up and say, I know when I'm not the person to be doing that spokespersoning or to be the voice of, because I'm not the right person. But finding the people that are and calling them in and supporting them sometimes is the most powerful thing we can do. And it's certainly the thing I found I can do, which is I'm really good at, is bringing the networks of people together who I think are really good at this. I'm great at nightingales, sitting around a campfire, and that I'm crap in other places and know to stand back. And for all sorts of other reasons, I shouldn't be the one to be doing it. So those are all the things about finding actually where can we be the cog in the machine. We don't all have to be the pilot. I don't know if those are tools, but they're just kind of guidances, and they're more of the rule book that it's never really written, and we're always making it up and borrowing from each other. And I think looking at other movements that seem similar, whether they're an activist one is really good, or if it's just like, how can we go and adore curlew or you know, Bitten, or go and be the Starling Murmuration Appreciation Society and go and get, you know, kids and old people to come and get out of their house in February and experience a beautiful thing. How can we be those those agents and those facilitators? Sometimes it's small stuff, but it can have a really huge impact. You never really know. We're always like trying to measure impact. It's immeasurable with this stuff and this world, and I think we need to firstly get away from that. Am I making a difference? Is my gesture important enough? Work with the children first. That's the other big thing.
Thank you, Sam.
Ramble there, uncontained ramble.
No, beautiful, beautiful, heartfelt, passionate ramble, which is brilliant. Exactly what we need, with a lot of wisdom in there, Sam. Thank you. Before we go, I just kind of wanted to talk about, you know, and I think you've touched upon it, but you and I both get involved in things where it's light touch. We're reaching out broadly to people and bringing them into an experience where maybe there is a deepening. I'm thinking of pilgrimage that you do and I do, and I'm also thinking about the Right to Roam movement as well, and how art and music is playing such a part in those, that it feels as if art and creativity right now in all of these things, suddenly there's an understanding of its value in drawing people in a non-threatening way, and it's an opportunity to bring people together, a little bit like the fire. Anything to say about those kind of things?
We're we're experiencing a really wonderful environmental success story right now of art and culture being upstream from strategy and from policy, as the old saying goes, which is the TV series about the privatization of water companies, and it links back into, you know, the poisoning of our rivers, Britain being one of the most kind of river thick countries in the world. And this TV show has had millions of viewers and has really brought the heat on the government to be called out on their inaction over monitoring, and the Environment Agency. So once again, a story, a really well told story by really great storytellers and really great actors and production company at, you know, high level, is going to be, I think, the thing that decides whether we privatize or we renationalize our rivers, our water companies. Boring stuff, but actually, what's the TV? I've totally forgotten the name of it. If anyone can write it in there. So for me, it comes down to story, because actually, the thing that is principle in that show, and it's the principle in the Sheffield trees, and it's principle in the post office scandal story that also had suddenly, you know, huge inquiries, millions of pounds of investigation going into the Horizon scandal and our post office stuff, which is, you know, a social injustice that you know, cancered our community post offices. Also, an erosion of community trust, is that when there's a story there, then people start paying attention. The plight of a thousand people's sufferance is never profiled more than the plight of one person's story. When you hear one person's tragedy and we can tell that story, suddenly everybody is invested in it. So the thing I really feel is so important is be story makers. Go and create the story. The thing I love about Extinction Rebellion and all the wonderful things that came out of that was the stories, the encounters, the frontline moments of heroism. And when we start doing them and telling them, they firstly help give us identity, and they are the kind of decorators of our commitment to activism in some ways. but the stories we can tell when I can say, nightingale sang with me when I did this, and those are for me the things that fill me with a sense of identity and a sense of place in the community, in the wider community. So how can we, each one of us, be the story carriers, experience the things that are threatened right now, so that we can be the tellers of those stories to the next generation, to our children, to our grandchildren. For me, that's a really important thing, how we can find that craft of being able to see the arc within what our lives are and the lives of Nightingale or Kingfisher. There's the Anne Harrod and me kind of connected over on our last conversation. I don't know, it's a bit of a sort of poor answer, I think, because I'm not entirely sure what the question was.
No, I think it's a good answer. And it kind of brings me to, I suppose, a point of maybe some personal work coming out of tonight, which is to explore and find an animal, a plant, a mountain, a river that feels as if it has a resonance for you, and just explore its story and how it meets your story in some way, and see if there are sparks.
Yeah, sorry, you talked about Right to Roam, and actually the right to Roam as a political campaign is very interesting. A massive film is about to come out about the campaign, and will be in cinemas across the UK, our country, or our land, sorry, it's called. It's brilliant. The thing it's interesting about the Right to Roam campaign, and the right how I'll answer this, is that actually it's trying to re-identify itself, because actually we're trying to let go of this idea. We don't use the word trespass. We want to get away from the kind of idea of the legality. We talk now about wild service. We borrowed this term off the beautiful tree, Sorbus torminalis, one of my favorite trees, delicious berry, amazingly beautiful leaf, and a very rare tree. And this idea, how can we be in service, in wild service to the land? And we as a campaign are trying to build up, what are all these things that we can do that see ourselves as the foot soldiers and the kind of the healers and the warriors and the whatever archetype or character you fit into. Everything that we do, whether it's just to go and walk the land and hug that tree, that's an act of wild service. And those gestures are so important. And the revaluing of those whimsical things of singing to the land are huge, absolutely massive. And we mustn't forget that. But I think the thing that I really wanted to say on that is about curiosity. And in terms of the barriers that we find, one of my greatest practices that I do is, before Right to Roam existed, was free walking. I was always a bit of a jump the barbed wire fence, follow my nose, follow the animal tracks, see where I've taken. And I use this practice. I do it with groups as well, and I do it with friends, and it's a wonderful thing to do, not on your own, which is go for a walk with your friends, take a group of like-minded souls, start at a place and say, in 2 hours we shall meet here, be that the pub or the bridge by the car park, wherever it is. Find a geographical place that isn't necessarily where you started or is where you started, and don't walk together. Go on a 2-hour walk where you follow your journey on your nose and your intuition. Collect stones, leaves, objects, things that for you, maybe if you've set an intention, that help mark that journey. And then when you return to each other, build in a time to sit. I say the pub because actually it's a wonderful place to sit with warmth and a hot drink or a cold beer, and tell the story to each other of your journey. It's a kind of therapy work that actually reveals so much of what that journey has activated in the things of your life that need identifying. And it's a wonderful way to go deep within a trusted friendship circle about sharing a love of the journey and the land, of what the land has spoken to us, and how it's like telling dreams to each other. It's such a profound way of creating those emotional maps. There are many practices like it and variations on this theme. It's just the one that I like to do, because I feel that when you tell a walk back with a real giving it space and listening, so you spend a good 10-15 minutes listening to each person's story and then explore it, you realize there's buried treasure along every step of that journey, because we all do a different walk. And even if we do a walk together, we're all doing a different walk. But the importance is the silence, the not talking, and the listening. As I say, two ears, one mouth, and we use them in those proportions. And you get to do that on the solo walks.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sam. I'm really aware that there will be questions, that people are sitting on questions and wanted to ask you some questions. So we'll draw our conversation to a close here. And I'm going to open it to questions again. Please, if you can, it'll help us if you put up an electronic hand. I hate to hit that thing, but it just really helps us. Alan.
Hello. Um, uh, I'm interested about choosing a species. Am I right in thinking that it would be a species that is an endangered one, or not?
Not necessarily, Alan. It's up to you. You know, each species is important. It isn't just about those who are in decline. Each species is important to its own ecosystem and to our kind of culture and to life. And so, whatever species it feels as if it's calling to you, that's the one to work with, or a mountain, or a river, or, you know, whatever. But anything that you feel is really calling to you to work with, that's the one to go for.
Okay, thank you.
Can I also maybe add
Yeah.
About how we let the species find us?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like looking for love. When you're looking for love, you're never going to find it. You have to have love find you. Um, and we all get obsessed about, I want to find the wolf. I want to be bear. But don't forget the incredible ecological power of the earthworm, or the sort of mite, or the aphid, that these are actually worlds of incredible wild service that they're doing, and sometimes hold huge wisdom, where maybe we're the thing that just makes it sticky underground and suck the sap out of a lime tree. Who knows?
So, Sam, like, was it you're developing your relationship with a nightingale that inspired this idea about befriending a species, or where did it come from?
No, I mean, I've always been, I was a real nature geek. So, like, I'd had a strong connection with, it wasn't birds at first. Actually, for me, it was trees. I had bear came to me, and not like physically came to me several times in my teenage years when I was doing wilderness work. Kept on having bears visit me, step up to me. I got like consumed by bear dreams. So that, and that was big one to start off with. But then it was beech trees and actually the lime tree for me, huge one. And then wild service came, and like they're like my friends. It's a friendship group. It's
Mm.
not. I don't think of them as like my spirit animal. We give those terms, and it can be quite daunting because we feel like we have a spiritual relationship with them. Just think of them as mates. Just think of them as somebody you can like speak to, and how we can find that our own comfortable communion. Talking to a plant and listening, or asking your question, bringing your questions to places. Um, I, can I share a really cool experience that happened to me 3 years ago when I had an unknown sickness that I thought I was going to die. I was taken to hospital and couldn't get seen to. And then suddenly, after morphine, the pain went away. I didn't know what it was. It was like an appendicitis. And the next day, absolutely fine, I went into the meadow and this flower jumped out at me, this white flower that I didn't know. And I knew a lot of the flowers in the meadow. And I looked it up and it was the meadow saxifrage. So I started going on this journey of like, what is a meadow saxifrage? I've heard this name, but I've never actually connected. Looked up saxifrage, or Latin for stonebreaker. And I was like, wow, why is this flower called the stonebreaker? Looked into its medicinal qualities because it was the remedy for gallstones. I was like, wow, what's a gallstone? Look into gallstones. And that was exactly what I'd had, an attack of a gallstone that night before. Nearly killed me 3 months later when I had a gallbladder infection. But it was the meadow saxifrage that told me that I learned what my condition was because the plant had found me. Being in a place where we're open to those sorts of things. This is how our ancestors did it. When we needed help, we went into the forest, went into the meadow, and let the plant that was our remedy call us in. We have all that faculty. We just have to kind of take off that way of trying to must do kick the right one. It's like, no, 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 don't try. Just go out there and 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 I don't know what you do. I don't know how. I can't say it for you, Adam. It's different for every person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to get clear about. I mean, it's great to hear your stories, but I'm trying to get clear what this program's offering in the sense of, so you go and pick a species. So is it like the idea is that the program is a way of encouraging some kind of advocacy for that particular species that you've chosen?
Yes, and creativity around it. So creative advocacy, yes.
Okay.
And a bit like Sam has said, if you haven't come with a species that's already kind of leaping at you, just be open to what comes across your path, what taps you on the shoulder, what starts to kind of come into your awareness over the next few weeks. And that is probably a way of a species asking you for some relationship. We've got, I think, 33 agreed senses. We're only taught generally about 5, but many of those are related to what Sam is talking about. They're old ways that our body knows things and our consciousness knows things that we're not wholly aware of. Hope that helps, Alan.
Yeah, it's very good. Thank you. That's really, really, yeah, put me in the picture. Thanks.
Great. Melena, am I saying that your name right?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, I did. Hello from Australia. Hi. And hello, Sam. I saw you at Woodford. Um,
Best
hello,
person in
hello.
the world. Yay!
Hi. Um, and I was just admiring the crazy disorder of your bookshelf, Sam. I could really connect with it. It's all happening over here as well. I have this sort of perennial question as an Australian, as somebody who passionately loves my environment. I have this wistfulness, Anghada, when you talk about the old stories of place, the rivers, the mountains, and this is probably an old chestnut for you guys in terms of when people are speaking about animism and having people in inverted commas from the new world, whether that's Australia, America, or colonized countries, um, this kind of query around a disorientation of, I feel, a passionate engagement with my land, and it's clearly my land. I grew up here, and I'm very embedded in my local environment and community. However, I don't feel the same degree of access to stories of that mountain or river, and the older human stories in particular. So there would be stories from here, from the original people, some of which are no longer being told because those people are not here, and there was a whole diabolical calamity of events of these things that happen. So I have a real curiosity. It's a question. It's not a little, lecture, and it's a real curiosity about how, as you would know, I've traveled to the UK, and it's partly to be able to be in an environment where stories are being told, where people can lay claim to those stories and really live deeply into them, I would feel all the issues around appropriation, around a level of fraudulence, around, yes, in part, I could relate to dingo, to wallaby, to lyrebird, but on some other levels, there are some things not happening in my own kind of cultural heritage, which would be Anglo-European heritage. So it's a bit of a question around this whole story of not just connecting with the species, but how do we connect with land where there's this felt sense of the numinous and the spiritual, but not these articulated old narratives that can bring that sense of homecoming, and if anything, concern about intrusion or appropriation or just a lack of entitlement to these very old stories that are still here. So I'm just kind of throwing it open for you to riff on. I'm not expecting an answer, just a curiosity. And I imagine that perhaps there might be some other people from places like America, from Australia, from Canada, who might be asking really similar questions if they're not Indigenous to that place or Indigenous in the older sense. Yeah.
Not only a beautiful question, but beautifully asked. I'm gonna ask Angharad. I'd really like you to maybe start answering that, and I'd like to make a contribution, but I'd really love to the space to speak to that. So
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Melanie. I realize who you are now. I see your face properly. It's a question that comes up very regularly. So a few things to talk about here. One is where there are people who have lived on a piece of land and have developed over thousands of years a culture and a tradition. It is often, if it's possible, worthwhile talking to them. Increasingly, my experience is that there is a growing awareness that we all need to be collaborating and working together on raising awareness of what's happening in the world. And it's very right that we're respectful of people's traditions and some of those stories that are sacred pieces. The other thing to say is that those stories didn't come from nowhere originally. They came from the land. The land is offering us stories all the time. And my encouragement to everyone really is to do the work of listening for those stories in the land and bringing them through. Every person who stands on a piece of land has a unique relationship with that piece of land, the trees on it. There are stories that you will have access to, that land wants to tell, that the stories want to tell. And if you're a storyteller, if you're a writer, and if you're so inclined, then to do that work. And, you know, when we come to looking at kind of storytelling later on, we'll do a little bit of this kind of work, and we'll be doing practices throughout this program to try and open ourselves, open our porosity so that we can hear those stories and bring them through, because that really is my experience. And I landed on this piece of land here 3 years ago, and part, you know, it was a sheep field, but of course it has a history, and I've looked into the history. But now I'm allowing the land itself to lead and to offer the stories. And so the land is becoming, the landscape is becoming storied. And I think that's part of what humanity's relationship with landscape has always been about. We are story creatures. And there is an idea that a long time ago, before we could read a book, all our stories were contained in the landscape. They came from the landscape. In fact, you know, cultures like my own, we still believe that the stories come from the landscape, as do the languages and the songs. And I think the landscape is still speaking. The whole animate world, the whole of creation is still speaking. And perhaps part of our work is to listen deeply and bring through those stories for now. Does that help, Melanie?
Yeah, very much. And something that came up for me as you were saying that was how this unease I feel about the human element potentially of those stories. So I can listen with and that porosity you spoke about, where I can move into part of the dream, the feeling of the dream. And there's this where it becomes a dissonance for me is perhaps if I'm imagining people, a human presence from these stories or a human dynamic or all the, and then it's troublesome because it feels like a superimposition over this land that is not, that again is coming maybe from my own sort of European educated sensibility around a narrative, around, I can't imagine divining heroes and heroines in this land. I can't imagine the salmon of wisdom. There are other things. I know there's a numinosity in this environment. So there's something that feels a bit uncomfortable for me around the idea that it is finding a very personal interpretation and that it might be useful for me, but it's not particularly relevant and maybe even a bit erasing of what is coming before. And that's that I'm not expecting solutions. I'm just throwing it out there because this is a perennial for me. It might, it'll be a conundrum I go to my grave with, but it's that feeling of listening to people talk about the Arthurian stories in Wales and this sort of proud claiming of heritage and this deep relating to the human dynamic as well of what's happening within these stories. And there's a feeling for me here of that almost like I can't I can't let there be made up people come into these stories. It's just maybe a personal block, but it's concern that it's sort of contravening thousands of years of what was here before. And also in your suggestion of seeking it out, yes, there are some remnant stories here, but even then there's confusion around who belongs where because of the whole violation and bastardization and alienation of this earlier culture here. So there's this sort of it's troubling. And then also 80 to 90% of the early people here, the original people here, died from measles. And then, of course, massacres and lots of things happened. So there's not that necessarily to seek out in my immediate environment. And that's just a query as well. Again, I'm not expecting it to be solved, but it's my response of, yes, I want that. And these things come up for me.
I mean, the one thing I would say is I think a lot of us with a very animate sensibility can often be shy of the human. And yet I go and ask myself, well, I think if we had no part in the great web of life, nature's pretty powerful. I don't think we'd be here. So my question is, so what can we do? What can we do with the gifts that we have? And the one thing I know is that humanity has always, through story, shared the law, Lore, of how to be in relationship both with the land and its beings, her beings, and the unseen realms as well. And that most of the stories talk about the importance of reciprocity, balance, and respect between species. And so maybe there's a way, I'm offering that just in case that helps with the whole human aspect of that quandary for you. Sam, I'm interested if you have anything to add.
Such wise words from both of you. I don't know where Melena's gone. If you are able to put your camera back on, it's nice to be able to.
No, I'm here. I'm just probably somewhere in amongst the 58 of us.
All right, you've got back again. Yeah. I think the first reassurance is that asking this question means you're on the right. That's the good news. Bad news is that no, it's not going to be solved in your lifetime or your children's lifetime. This is the kind of ripple back from, of colonization. It's the colonizers' guilt, whatever one might call it, of that sense of realization of what our forefathers have done, and mothers as well, of what happens when cultures meet in brutal ways, and that it's never going to be solved. And what is that outcome that we want to get to as cultures is different from everyone, and from and so this is going to be a constant social battle, and you are obviously in my mind, on the right path, but there are many people who obviously wouldn't share in the same sensitive longing for reconciliation, and what this is about reconciliation, both societally, culturally, but because there isn't reconciliation yet, you feel deprived and excluded from a relationship that every human should have, and it's so important to have. And so how one accesses it is so difficult. And there isn't a short answer. We want, in this society, we want fast fixes. We want that instant gratification, because we're an instant gratification society, for something that takes thousands of years to grow, and generations of inbuilt orality and inheritance, and that way that this material is transmitted from one person to another. It's slow stuff. One of the great successes is from Anne Harrod's land, which is Wales, which is with the language, and it always starts with language. It's the hard thing to do, particularly when you're, how does one learn a language that isn't our own when we arrive in a new land? But starting with the words, because the words hold the wisdom, and they hold that relationship. And although that's a massive undertaking, it's one of the most powerful ways. But there are other ways that we can do. And remember, you may never have that same ease of relationship that I found with a nightingale, because they're just, 20 miles away from where I live. And I've met lots of people, and I've grown up within a culture that actually isn't that far away, that our ancestors revered this bird and others. But actually, part of the work that I did as a song collector and going and meeting the elders was part of my and the work with the Gypsy Traveller community in this country was part of the service that I feel has really helped me feel a sense of allegiance to the land. And just for context, 3 generations ago in my family, was not a word of any of my ancestors, not a word of English spoke. Yiddish, Polish, Russian migrants who came to a land. I haven't got a drop of British blood, yet I feel so immensely indigenous to Britain. Now, a lot of people might think I don't deserve that or shouldn't, but I do, and that can't be taken away from me. And it's the singing of the songs that's helped that and really enforced that. And it's also my relationship with the landscape. But that idea of wild service can be not just to the land and the species, but also for the communities that protect and are custodian. So actually, part of the work can also be about how do we support the sovereignty of the communities who do hold that wisdom and that line of connection, and the work that we can do from the outside as supporters is also immensely important. I'm sure I'm not saying this because I think you don't do it already, but the wonderful thing about Woodford Folk Festival was here as a festival that really platformed and really held space for the Indigenous community in the sandbox there, the sand stage, and helped platform that cultural autonomy and identity. in a way that was accessible and not voyeuristic or there to be to be sort of exoticized. And sometimes the best thing we can do is say it is not ours to get involved with. I've had to do that in a number of occasions within cultures, within traditions, within Britain. It's not mine to, I will be a bystander and observer, but I can't be a participant in that. And I would love to be, because it's wonderful, and it's beautiful, and it's irresistible, but I can't go there. And these are all the things of where we just have to step back. And I don't know if that helps, and every situation is different. But yeah.
Both of it. No, thank you to both of you. That's really helpful. And I think you're using the words deprived and excluded. I felt a kind of yeah, that's the feeling, you know. But also at the same time, I don't know if you can hear it in the background.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, the whip birds are calling. So in the background, there's this woo, woo, and they're two birds. So one's making the call and one's making the answer. And I actually felt, oh, there's something in that. And it just started when you started talking. So there's this sort of curiosity too about a connection with the birds, and that one's making the call and one's making the response. And that's for me to dream into, that there's something coming from that at the same time as you're speaking around
Yeah.
the instantaneousness of the response, that they belong together. That's all, this feeling of like, okay. So I'll just, that's a mystery. I don't have a logical explanation for it, but I have an intuition. Oh, there's something speaking to me at the same time as human Sam and human Angharad are speaking, and maybe they're also chiming in. And they've got something for me to listen to as well. Thank you. I feel like I've taken up a lot of time. Sorry, but it's the burning question in me. So thank you.
Can I just
Thank you.
a reassurance very quick? I know, sorry, if it's okay, that I observed something at Woodford Folk Festival that really put me in my place, and as a reassurance that we have work to do. And I've been very connected to the curlew in Britain and the curlew protection campaign. For me, one of the greatest bird songs in the world, and all the work we're doing to conserve it and try and bring it to public awareness. And at Woodford, the community, the indigenous Aboriginal community there, who also you have the Australian curlew, which is very, very close and similar. They did the curlew dance. I went and watched them do this curlew. The kids and the elders all gathered and did practice the curlew dance, and they all suddenly became curlew. And they just did this with the singing and the drums. And I realized in that moment that they were doing more to connect and embody and build that sense of kinship with curlew than I will ever do in my life with any species, or we could ever do with our curlew. We have so much work to do in Britain, and and we're doing so well. But what I saw there was singularly one of the most powerful embodiments of being inseparable from nature and a particular species. So Alan's question earlier, like how I just we're all children in this quest of finding our relationships in the end, because of the severance, and we're working with our own severance and our own sense of loss, and that absolute, what does reclamation mean? There's a great creativity in what we can do, but there is, as I said, there's no rule book anymore. There's no right or wrong way, and we've in many ways lost too much to try and retrieve the the entire encyclopedia of how it works. But we have people like Harry who are maintaining and carrying forth so much that we have, and the joy is actually that uh, reimagining how that material and that stuff is relevant for today. And that's in many ways, for me, the big question, the most important question: how do you make it all relevant? And yeah, an
I'd
opportunity.
love to just say to that around the physicalizing or that somatic experience of an animal, because I've observed the same thing. Many, many years ago, my son was 4, and we were walking along behind the dunes of a beach, and he saw an echidna, and he immediately just dropped down and put his face really close to the sand. And I thought, what are you doing? And he was just being an echidna. And I dropped to my knees and I got close to the sand, and I had a totally different experience of reality. So thanks for that reminder too. It's been in conversation with my friends lately around embodying. It's not just through song, it's not just through story, but actually physically moving into the stance or the posture or the gestures. Another thing with big kangaroos and mobs of kangaroos, I was told recently, if there's like 30 coming through, it can be quite scary. They're big, and they're on their way. And one of them is to create less alarm, is to actually do that, to scratch, to actually just move into it, and it can help alleviate their own nervous systems. It's recognizable behavior because we have predator eyes and they have prey eyes to the side. So that also has been something that I'm really curious more and more about practicing. So thanks for reminding me. I love that feeling of moving into the posture of an animal or even a plant sometimes, just to have that feeling in my body that might be like their experience. I don't know.
Thank you, Melania. We are going to have to move on. Sam, thank you very, very much. You've reminded me of so many things, so much richness to that we kind of bring into this kind of program, this way of seeing the spirit. And I love the idea of wild service, that what we're doing here is in some way wild service. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Been a pleasure being here. You're welcome to the Nightingales if you can make it to South England in April and May. And I want to do a shout out for a brilliant book called An Immense World by Ed Yong, which speaks about that, about the sensory awarenesses of the animal kingdom and how we and it's a great resource for suddenly being able to see the world through the mole rat's eyes, or indeed through kangaroo's eyes or pit viper, and start to realize that we think all these creatures see the world in the way we do because we assume they must do, or a fumbling idiots can't. How can they exist? But they are specialists in one particular sensory world, and it's such a great story of how we can actually start to see our limitations but borrow from others. So yeah, An Immense World by Ed Yong, brilliant book.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Maybe you can put that in the chat for us and we can have that. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to switch off and let you carry on. Bye. Thank you, and Harriet.
So I want to turn our minds now to where we go from here. You've kind of had you've heard a lot of what Sam has said. In terms of practice, it sounds really simple, but finding a place to sit in the natural world where you can go regularly to sit and to commune would be a brilliant thing. To build a relationship with a small patch of land, ideally in your garden or in your close environment, where you can go and sit and think and offer your presence, and to turn up and turn up and turn up, build a relationship, build a relationality with that place. I'm going to suggest that you buy a sketch pad or a journal, and that in this space and time between now and when we meet for our first circle in about a fortnight, that you do some writing, some exploration. Some of you might have a creature, an animal, a river, a mountain, or whatever that you want to work with, that you do some journaling around that you might do some drawing around it, that you might open yourself to ideas, allow it to penetrate your dreams. And for those of you that don't have a species or an animal or a mountain calling as yet, just open yourselves to the possibility that over the course of the next few weeks, something is going to start to knock on your door, metaphorically. It might appear in dreams. It might appear in a conversation, as Sam was saying the other day when we were talking about this session. Just when we were talking, he saw two kingfishers. In this, he was on his way to get to get his car from the mechanics in an industrial site, and on an old Tesco trolley at the edge of a river there were 2 kingfishers. What are the chances of that? So open your eyes, open your ears, open all your senses to the possibility. And then we will begin some practices when we next meet to hone down into what we might be able to do with this. And we'll do more work in groups as well to start to piece things together and to see where we go. So that's where we're going next when we get to a circle. We then have John Young. And by then, I'm hoping that you'll have an idea of who and what you might want to work with. And John will be speaking about how to connect, how to work with these places at a deeper level, ways of storytelling with these places. You heard a practice from Sam. Maybe that's another way to open yourself over these kind of course of these next few weeks to what might want to be in relation, is to go for a walk and to just kind of pick up feathers and stones and seeds or whatever's coming up that might just kind of help you to sink into where this wants to go. Are there any questions before we close tonight? If those of you who already signed up know what you're doing, for those of you who haven't signed up yet, but you think after this call tonight that you would like to join us for the rest of it, please go to the Animate Earth website and you'll find all the details you need there. Just finally, if there are any questions or anything arising. Katie.
Hi, yeah. Unfortunately, I won't be able to join for the whole program just from a financial consideration. So I'm just wondering, and I within my little breakout room, there was somebody else that was in the same position. So I just wonder what we could be doing. And also there were some of the sessions that you were talking about of just some of the work that I'm already doing that I was like, oh my God, I would really, really love to jump in on the, on the session about, the legalities of rights of nature. And just, I don't know, is there any way that there is that of like being able to, rather than purchasing the whole program, that you can kind of come in as a guest for one, or whether that disrupts, the whole, obviously there's a whole, narrative arc that people are going on, whether that disrupts that, or whether there's a way that, I don't know, that you can
Katie,
access to a recording, or I don't know, something. Go on.
Have you spoken to the team at Animate Earth? Because we have bursaries that are available, and we hate it when finances are, become an issue. So we try really, really hard to enable people to come along with us, even if that means kind of a longer term kind of payment plan or anything like that. So please, you will find a link to Cindy, or it might be support at. Kind of write to Cindy and explain where you're at, and we will find a way. We will try very hard to find a way to work with you to enable you, because finances shouldn't be a problem. We have to make these courses pay, and we have to pay the team and the tutors and things, but there are ways that we can support, and we have bursaries. That's what these bursaries are for.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for bringing it up. I'm sure you're speaking on, there will be other people in the same boat as you say. So thank you. Leah.
Just really quickly, I was trying to book on for the full program and it was saying closed, so I couldn't book on, but I contacted Cindy, who emailed me straight back, and it has now reopened. So just in case anyone else is in that same boat where they think that the tickets have sold out, that's not the case. You can now book back on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leah. Yeah, it's one of those things that kind of, you set it up on the computer and then you have to override these certain things. Thank you. Well, diolch yn fawr. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for being part of the constellation of this. I, of course, hope that most of you will continue on this journey. I'm really looking forward to it. I have an ash tree at the top of my land that has ash dieback. And as part of this journey, I'm really interested in creating a storytelling piece where the ash is the centerpiece and many other species hang off it. And I'm hoping that there will be other storytellers and other artists that might want to collaborate. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to, as well as kind of tutoring, but I'm really looking forward to the delicious process of creating and co-creating together and becoming community and supporting ourselves and each other through these really difficult times in our worlds. So my blessings to you all, even if we don't see you again. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing this evening with you, and go well. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Nos da.